Okay, so here we have an outline of the Earth. So we're going to be going over um, the layout geometrically of the Earth and how the zodiac landmarks for the tropical zodiac. Now, what's important to understand the tropical zodiac, we're talking about the Tropic of Cancer, which is at 0 degrees east, and the Tropic of Capricorn, which is at 180 degrees west, which on the map, talking about here, 0 degrees, we're Ghana, Timbuktu. This is the central location for the universal time stamp. So the universal time moves throughout the 24 time zones following this motion. So when you look at time zone first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, this is why when we look at the fall back and the taking back of an hour of time for what they call the fallback, you have to understand why in this particular area, because at this particular time of the fall, when the sun from the summer during the Tropic of Cancer, right, the Tropic of Cancer, which is, as we said here, 0 degrees, is it's a measure for when we can reach when the sun is at its peak, from when it comes back to its lowest tropic, the Tropic of Capricorn, its lowest peak. This is what lays out the tropical boundaries of the earth for the soul's migration movement, which the ancients did and saw as a funerary boat or a funerary procession in which they would leave ground zero and circumnavigate around the whole earth. Now, this particular time of the fall, the Day of Atonement and darkness, it's the particular time period that we're looking at now. So this polarity here is looked at as the landmark with Libra. When we understand the 0 degrees is the landmark for the Tropic of Cancer, which each zodiac house composes of 30 degrees. This is also this is also looked at as 36 deacons, and we'll go into how the dracons, whether it's the dragons or the decans, or however you look at it. But one thing you have to understand is during this particular time of the 0 degrees of Tropic of Cancer, this is the summer for the northern tropic, the northern hemisphere. And during the summer of the northern tropic for the northern hemisphere, which includes North America, the northern parts of Africa that we see here split in half, and the parts of Europe, Asia, that are in this northern tropic. So, and then the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 180 degrees from there, brings in the summer when the sun it enters the winter for the northern hemisphere and the summer for the southern hemisphere. And then the areas in the northern hemisphere, by the time the soul movement of time, the calculation of how these deacons, these dracons, would end up setting up, it was 3 decans for a constellation. 10 days, every 10 days equaled 1 decan. So you have 3 days, which is 3 deacons, which is a total of 30 days. We understand the 3 10-day periods that make out this constellation of the Dracon, which was placed into 120 degrees of seasons, 120-day seasons to make a 365. So this would be 120 days. This would be the other 120 days. This would be the other 120 days. So this season would be looked at from the midnight point or from the northern point of what we look at as the spring, which is the opposite of the time of the fall, 90 degrees east, the Aries, which in this grand scale is 270 degrees, which is the 18th time zone, which is landmarked in the 18th time zone. This area is 90 degrees east, and this would be to 60 degrees east that this landmark, this is why we find in these areas of Cambodia for the spring, the New Year, the cherry blossom, the Kham New Year festival. During this particular time of the spring, we understand the soul migration of time from the fall and the winter being these times where you would need to make these three, understand those three pilgrimages. So you understand the three legs, 270, 0, and then into these lands for this particular time of coming over, crossing over before Halloween, before the October 31st, November 1st, this particular period. We understand this particular area, the 8-ball time zone, and this ending of the cap here before you could cross over. So when you look at the crossover, right, these areas here, the 90 degrees west to 120 degrees west to the 8-ball time zone, this area is the Libra. You look at the Libra, we're talking about the recordings, the books, the bookings. So this area universally is the last landmass to see the universal day before the setting of here that takes place here. So this is why the calculations of the calendar, the tallies of this landmass was so important, and why at certain periods, why they call this the Dark Age. Dark Ages, when you realize they did not have the ability to calculate beyond the 0 degrees. So from 90 to 120 is the Libra, 120 to 150 the Scorpio. Here we have the Scorpio coast, and when we look at this, when we look at the zodiac outside of the standard tropical zodiac into the 13th zodiac, there's something called Ophiuchus, which occurs on November 30th. November 30th. November 30th is during the time of this eclipse, after 30 days after the fallback of the time frame of the going back an hour time on around October 1st, 31st, November 1st. And then around 30 days from there, you have the month of Ophiuchus when you look at the 13th zodiac. So in the tropical zodiac, because we're measuring the soul's precession of the tropic, not just the lunar, right? So the intercalary of the soul included the 13th month to include that 5 days extra that's remainder outside of the completion of 360. So when we look at Virgo, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, this is why these areas here, the Virgin Islands, these particular things refer to. The Leo, 30 degrees to 60 degrees. Cancer, 0 to 30. Gemini, right here, this is where the 33 degrees of the Nile Valley, we understand this area of 30 degrees, 330 to 0, which happens to be when you come from here 90 to 60, 60 to 30. This particular area right here in the Nile Valley is at that 33 degrees. The Meson, you understand the Meson, 60 degrees from the Virgo brings you the Pisces. So from here, the Virgo and the Pisces are the last constellations before the ending of the seasons of light and the ending of the seasons of darkness. Before the ending of darkness, Pisces is the last landmark constellation, and Virgo is the last landmark constellation before the ending of the summer, to bring us into Libra, the fall, and Aries, the spring. Then Scorpio and Taurus would follow. And their polarities is where we get the Scorpion King and where we see the wearing of the bull's tail for the Taurus. Because this is a complete 180 from the 8 all the way to the 20. As you see there, that would mark that polarity of that boundary of that mirroring of this landmass with that landmass cosmically. And so, after the Scorpio and the Taurus, this is why we can find the Taurus Mountains being located in this area. The naming, why they name these things in these landmarks in these areas, comes from the cosmic representation of these ancient Neguses that made these navigations. So you can better understand these things. So then from Sagittarius, 150 to 180, we understand the bafflement and the mouth of death, the ring of fire being right here. This is where the ending of the day technically would be when you understand the flip side of that is 30, the polarity to that is 30 degrees east, which is this area here. So this area here to 0 in Africa. This is where we find the Gemini, the horizon line, the Horus eye, the all-seeing eye, and these things in this particular region being landmarked there because it's giving you the cosmic representation from which these ancient navigators did. So when you look at the Capricorn, which is 180 to 210, or 180 to 150 degrees east, and that polarity with that is 0 degrees to here. This is where Atlantis, when you understand Ariel, the Leo, the lion, Are, Leo, Ariel, the Atlantic, Atlantis, Ariel under the sea as a land in reference to the land of the north. With this polarity here with the Aquarius, the waters, the Pacific Oceans, the Southern Pacific, and these lands there. So that is the connection between Leo and Aquarius when you look at Atlantis and the Atlantic Ocean, and this area is 0 degrees west to 30 degrees west here, where we find the Leo constellation, which happens to be the Atlantic, which we see why, because this is the mouth of the Sphinx here in this area of the great domain, the great hemisphere. So this was the mouth of protection, the Atlantis, the lion, the Maurer, the protector, these waters, this area here. And this is why the Portugal and Spain up until 1492 could not get the necessary documentation to come across those waters. You understand, the Barbary pirates and the Moroccan pirates that was in these waters. And then from there, 60 degrees to 90 degrees, we have the Virgo, the Virgin Islands, Amazon, the Ornella, and the different things in relation to the mother culture here. Some of the oldest forms of the mother culture we can find present there. And that is connected with the Pisces. So when we see the Pisces, the Jade Mountain, and the yin and the yang, we got to understand the balance of this light and darkness, of these polarities that we see here. The zodiacs. So these zodiacs is what geometrically, numerically map out the geometric landmarkings based upon just the numerical values in the wholeness of a circle. So that's how these things are looked at in the circle. Especially you can see for just a complete day, the time zones, the sun rises, first hour, second hour, you know what I'm saying, the ending hour, sunset. Then you would have the new day, the new 12 hours in the other hemisphere to then set and begin a new day. So this rotation, this motion, at some point they had to figure out where the ending point was and what was going to be the calculation and where that mouth of death would be. It's the Pacific Ocean, the Ring of Fire. This is why it's called the Pacific. Rest in peace, R.I.P., the mouth of death, the Shalom Seas. All of that is the beginning and the end. So it's just interesting, you know.